My name is Gregory, and this happened last December when I spent a full week alone in my house. My girlfriend left town to stay with her parents for the holidays, but I stayed behind because of work. I live in a quiet neighborhood in a small town in upstate New York. The houses are spaced far apart, and most of my neighbors travel for Christmas, so the whole street was basically deserted. At first, I liked the idea. I pictured quiet nights, plenty of sleep, catching up on shows, and enjoying that cozy holiday feeling on my own. What actually happened that week still lives rent-free in my head. On my second night alone, around 6:30 p.m., it was already fully dark. It had been lightly snowing most of the day, leaving a thin white layer on the yard and driveway. I was in the kitchen making a basic dinner, pasta with chicken. Normally my girlfriend cooks. I'm not exactly talented in that department. I had the TV on in the background just to make the house feel less empty. As glad as I was to have the place to myself, I wasn't used to the silence. While I was eating, I heard something that didn't fit. It took a second to identify it. Singing. I muted the TV and listened. The sound was coming from outside. It got clearer, and I realized someone was singing Jingle Bells. At first, I figured it had to be neighborhood kids messing around, but the voice didn't sound like a child. It was a grown man. I walked toward the front door. With every step, the singing got louder. By the time I reached it, it sounded like whoever it was standing right on my front stoop. I had a bad feeling in my stomach, but I still thought it might just be a caroler. I opened the door. A man stood under my porch light, about 35, no hat, coat too thin for the cold. The strangest part was that he wasn't reacting to me at all. He stared straight down at my welcome mat, fully focused on singing Jingle Bells, like he didn't even know I'd opened the door. I forced a little smile because I had no idea what else to do. I've never had Christmas carolers at my house, and I certainly had never seen a lone adult man doing it. He didn't look directly threatening. He just seemed off, confused, maybe slow. I even wondered if he might have special needs, because he gave no sign he noticed me. He finished the song. I waited for him to say something or move on. Instead, he drew a breath and started Jingle Bells again. Same slow, off-key version, but now he lifted his head and locked eyes with me. My smile faded. I stood there another minute pretending to listen, hoping he'd stop after the second round. He didn't. He just kept looping the song. I glanced at my phone. Almost 4 minutes had passed. 4 minutes of Jingle Bells on repeat. Finally I said, "Thank you," as politely as I could and slowly closed the door. I figured that would be the end of it. The singing didn't stop. It kept going at the same steady volume right outside my door. I went back to the table and tried to finish my dinner, but the longer it continued, the more uneasy I felt. Nothing about him seemed normal, and the fact that he was just planted on my porch singing over and over made my skin crawl. I wondered again if he had someone with him out on the street, maybe a caretaker, but I hadn't seen anyone else out there. The whole house felt wrong, like my personal space ended at the doorknob and he was pressed up against the line. It went on for my entire meal. After about 10 straight minutes, the singing suddenly cut off. The silence was so abrupt it made me jump. I got up and looked through the window beside the door. I expected he'd be gone. He wasn't. He'd moved to the end of my driveway and was standing in the snow, facing my house, completely still. I couldn't hear him singing anymore. He was just staring at the door like he was waiting. I opened the door a crack and told him he couldn't be there, that it was private property and he needed to leave. He didn't move. At all. The stillness was worse than the singing. I told him if he didn't leave, I'd call the police. Then I shut and locked the door again, and watched him through the window. Nothing. He just stood there. I really didn't want to call the cops. I kept thinking he might be mentally ill, and I didn't want to escalate things if he wasn't actually doing anything violent. Finally, I decided to just go upstairs, lock my bedroom door and try to ignore it. Upstairs, I checked out the window. He was no longer at the end of the driveway. I felt a huge wave of relief and convinced myself the threat had worked. I got into bed, turned on a lamp, and started reading to wind down. Maybe 20 minutes later, I heard it again, but this time from behind the house. Jingle bells, same voice, same slow tone, now faintly coming from my backyard. I jumped out of bed and went to the back window. He was standing directly in my fenced backyard, in the snow below my bedroom window, looking up at me while he sang. I slid the window open and yelled down that I was calling the police. He stopped singing instantly. He stood in complete silence for maybe 3 seconds. Then he suddenly sprinted toward the back door below me, vanishing from view. A second later, the house exploded with sound. He started screaming at the top of his lungs, and I don't mean normal screaming. It sounded like some unhinged death metal vocalist, but wilder, raw, animalistic. It echoed through the yard and into every room of the house. Then he began slamming into the back door, kicking it, throwing himself against it. The door shook so hard, I felt the impacts from my upstairs bedroom. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just weird. He was trying to get in. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and told the dispatcher a man was actively trying to break into my house. I held a baseball bat with my free hand and backed into my bedroom closet, closing myself in. The operator told me to stay hidden and stay on the line. I could still hear him screaming and hammering at the door. Every second felt like the one where the wood would finally splinter. Then just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The house went silent except for my breathing. I didn't know if he'd run off or actually made it inside. I stayed in that closet until the police arrived. They checked the yard and confirmed the back door was still locked and intact. The dispatcher told me I could come out. When I stepped outside to talk to the officers, my legs felt weak. In the backyard, we found deep footprints in the snow where he'd stood beneath my window and where he'd run up to the back door. The tracks then led off into the woods behind my property. The cops followed the footprints a little way into the trees but came back quickly, saying it wasn't worth going deeper in the dark. They told me people act strangely all the time, and as long as I kept my doors locked, I'd be fine. They didn't seem especially motivated to find him, which really bothered me, but I was too shaken to argue. After they left, the house felt even emptier and colder than before. I checked every lock in the place twice, then 3 times. By that point I was done with the whole alone time thing. I just wanted my girlfriend home. I went to stay at my parents' place for Christmas Eve and Christmas. As for that man, he never came back, at least not that I know of. This next story is from about 10 years ago, when I was 6. It was around the time I started really remembering things clearly, and this is one of those memories that never left. My birthday is in November, and that year my birthday party happened on the same day as the Odell Beckham Jr. catch. My whole family are Cowboys fans, but I was a Giants fan. I didn't really understand football yet, but everybody kept talking about the catch all night, even during my party. I just knew it was something crazy and that it was my birthday, so I was happy. For my birthday, I got tickets to a Mavs-Wizards game on December 30th. I was a Cavaliers fan, but we lived outside Dallas in the DFW area, so I knew a ton of Mavericks fans and liked them too. It was going to be my first NBA game and I was thrilled. Christmas was 5 days before that. I got an Odell Beckham Jr. jersey and a Mavericks shirt and sweatshirt. I was just becoming a sports fan, and it felt like all my interests were coming together. One of my Christmas gifts was tickets to another Mavs game, this one on December 27th against the Thunder. 2 NBA games in 1 week. I was over the moon. We went to the Thunder game first. The Mavs won a close one, something like 112-105. Seeing that arena for the first time was insane. The size, the noise, it was like another world. We drove the 45 minutes home from the American Airlines Center, and I couldn't stop talking about it. The next couple of days were normal, and then it was time for the December 30th game. I didn't know that would be my last NBA game for years. At the first game, our seats were great, about 7 rows from the court, pretty much center. This time we were around row 20 in a corner, not as close, but I didn't care. I was just excited to be there again. The Mavs were destroying the Wizards by halftime, up by like 20-30 points. During the break, like any 6-year-old, I wanted to roam around, get food, and go to the bathroom by myself. But my parents kept me with them. We went to get food. We waited in line for about 20 minutes. My dad left to stand in a different line at another food stand, and I stayed with my older brother while he paid. As my brother talked to the cashier, I walked a short distance, maybe 30 feet, to throw away some candy wrappers. That's when this tall white man came up to me. "Hey, are you lost?" he asked. I shook my head and didn't answer. He looked around like he didn't see any adults near me. "I don't see your parents," he said. "Let's go look." He took my hand. I was just a kid, so I let him lead me. He walked me toward the nosebleed sections, saying we were going to the intercom so they could call out my name and find my parents. I said okay and kept walking. We got up toward the top level and stood around for about 10 minutes. I remember it being strangely empty up there. He kept looking around, waiting for the coast to clear, like he was timing something. Then he tried to guide me toward some emergency stairs or maybe an elevator. I don't remember exactly, only that there was no one else around, and wherever he wanted me to go was more isolated. That's when stranger danger suddenly clicked in my brain. The guilt and fear flooded in all at once. I realized I shouldn't be with this man. He didn't have any credentials, no staff badge, nothing that made him look official. The moment he let go of my hand to check his phone, I ran. I sprinted back down into the stands, heart pounding. As I ran, I glanced back once and saw him still standing there, watching me with a small, unsettling grin. I found my brother again. He hadn't told my parents I wandered off because he didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't tell them either. I just said I'd gone to the bathroom. He asked if I was okay, and I said yes. The Mavs won, but I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to go home. I was quiet on the way out of the arena and on the walk to the car. My parents noticed I wasn't my usual hyper self but chalked it up to being tired. As we drove home, I started dozing off in the back seat. Then came this loud honk from behind us, tires screeching. It jolted me awake. I turned around. It was him. The same man from the arena was driving a truck behind us with 3 other people inside. I couldn't see their faces clearly, just silhouettes, but I knew it was him. My parents yelled at them after they pulled up next to us at a light. The men just stared. Nobody responded. No one rolled down a window. I wanted to scream the truth, to tell my parents that guy had tried to take me, but I didn't. I don't know why. Fear, embarrassment, shock, maybe all of it. When we got home, I went straight to bed and passed out quickly. Sometime in the night, I woke up with chills. A flashing light was hitting my bedroom window. Half asleep, I thought it might be something innocent, like holiday lights. I pulled back the curtain. He was standing outside, shining a flashlight into my room. I screamed for my parents and ran to their bedroom, telling them someone was at my window. They rushed outside and searched the yard for about 20 minutes but found nothing. Because I was a kid, they assumed I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just headlights from a passing car. I knew what I saw. A few days later, on New Year's Eve, we were staying up to watch the ball drop. About 5 minutes before midnight, the doorbell rang. My parents answered it. I wasn't paying attention until I heard his voice. I knew immediately it was him. I told my parents. I blurted out the whole story, that he'd taken me to the upper level at the game and I'd run away. They didn't believe me. They said it was just a man handing out lost dog flyers for his cousin's dog. That's what he'd told them at the door. The night continued normally after that, at least on the surface. A year later, on New Year's Eve again, I had mostly buried the memory. Then there was a knock at my bedroom window. I got up and looked out. No one was there. Just a piece of paper stuck to the glass. On it, in writing I didn't recognize, it said, "This new year you'll meet me again." I showed the note to my parents. This time they believed me. They filed a police report. We never heard anything back. No arrests, no updates. Now I'm 16. Every New Year's Eve I get that old feeling of dread, like he's going to suddenly reappear. I told my parents I don't like NBA games anymore, that they're not my thing. But the truth is, I'm scared he knows where I live. I've been thinking about going to a Cavs-Mavs game next January. It would be my first trip back to the arena since then. But I'm honestly not sure I can do it. That experience didn't just scare me away from basketball. It's the reason I always keep my curtains closed. Music, I remember this one December night far too clearly. Even now, I think about how close my family may have come to something terrible. It was early December, and my wife Marianne and I had decided to drive up into the mountains to cut down a real Christmas tree. It was something we'd always talked about doing, and our 7-year-old son Andrew was thrilled about it. The sky was thick with clouds, the air cold and heavy, like it wanted to snow again at any minute. To us, that just made the whole thing feel more Christmas-wide. Driving up those winding mountain roads with Christmas music playing made me feel like a kid again. The spot Marianne found online was pretty remote. When we pulled into the little parking area, we were the only car there. A few scattered light posts kept it from being totally dark, which was one of the reasons we'd chosen the place. We still brought flashlights and an axe for the tree. Snow from a recent storm covered the ground, and up this high it didn't melt quickly. Andrew jumped out and immediately started pelting us with snowballs. I fired some back. We wanted this to be a special memory for him. We grabbed the flashlights and the axe and started up a narrow, unmarked trail into the trees. Snow crunched under our boots as we walked. Andrew kept running ahead, pointing at trees he thought were perfect. The farther we went, the more the parking lot disappeared behind us. The only light came from a faint moon behind the clouds in our flashlights. The silence was almost total. At one point I asked them to stop just so we could listen. Nothing. Maybe the faintest breeze, that was it. If I'd been alone, the emptiness and dark would have really unnerved me. After a while, Andrew started getting quieter. Once the light from the parking lot was completely gone, he mentioned how dark it was and asked how far we were going. Marianne stayed closer to me, and I could tell she was uneasy too. I kept feeling like something was behind us, like we were being watched. Every time I turned around, the trail was empty. About 10 minutes in, we found a patch of tall, full trees that looked good. Andrew ran from one to another, circling them, calling out his favorites. Marianne leaned in and whispered that she wanted to pick quickly. She had a bad feeling. I understood exactly what she meant. The fun of it was waning fast. Then I heard it, soft, deliberate crunching in the snow behind us. Too heavy to be an animal, too measured to be random. I turned. A man in dark clothes stood about 20 feet back on the path. He wasn't dressed for the cold. His bare hands were red and raw, his jacket thin like a windbreaker. His face looked pale and stiff, like he'd been out in the cold way too long. Marianne instantly pulled Andrew closer. When the man realized we were looking at him, he smiled, a slow, unsettling smile, and stepped a little closer. "Looking for a Christmas tree?" he asked. His voice broke the silence in a way that made my skin crawl, deep but oddly soft. Before I could answer, Andrew enthusiastically said, "Yeah." Panic jolted through me. I didn't want this man to know anything about us. Marianne quickly cut in, saying we were just walking. The man stepped a bit closer again. The way he moved made every hair on my arm stand up. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not a park ranger." He said it in a way that made it very clear he knew exactly why we lied. We were obviously there to cut down a tree, which was illegal. I didn't want to talk to him at all. Something was very wrong. He looked hungry, exhausted, desperate. Homeless was the word that came to mind. I quietly told Marianne we should head back to the car. She nodded and gripped Andrew's jacket. As we walked past him, he just stood there, smiling and watching us go, giving these short little nods like he was politely seeing us off. Andrew kept trying to turn around and look, and we kept telling him to face forward. Every time I glanced back, the man was slightly closer than he should have been, even though I never heard him speed up. I whispered to Marianne that once we hit the main road by the parking lot, she needed to run with Andrew straight to the truck. She squeezed his hand tighter and nodded, never looking back. His footsteps dragged behind us, slow and deliberate, like his boots were too big or the snow too deep. But he never quite fell behind. When we could finally see the break in the trees where the car was parked, I told them to go. Marianne scooped Andrew up and ran as fast as she could down the rest of the path. I stayed a few seconds longer, holding the axe and turning to face the man. He'd stopped walking. He just stood there, staring at me. He slowly raised his hands halfway, still smiling. "I mean no harm," he said. "Why don't you get back to your truck now?" My heart skipped. He said truck like he already knew exactly what we were driving. I told him we didn't want any trouble and turned, heading quickly back toward the lot. Halfway there, I heard Marianne scream my name with a panic in her voice that made my blood run cold. Both right side tires on the truck were slashed. We didn't have to look closely to know who had done it. I told Marianne to call 911 immediately. She had trouble getting a signal at first and had to move around the snowy lot holding her phone up. She never went far from the truck. Andrew, now fully sensing something was wrong, sat in the backseat watching us with wide eyes. When Marianne finally got through, she was struggling to explain between breaths, so I took the phone and told the dispatcher where we were, and that a strange man had likely sabotaged our tires and was still somewhere nearby. I emphasized that we had a child with us. The dispatcher said officers and a tow truck would be sent, and told us to stay inside the truck with the doors locked. She stayed on the line as long as the weak signal allowed, but the call kept cutting in and out. Then Marianne suddenly gasped and pointed toward the tree line where the trail was. Several people were standing just inside the trees. I counted at least 3. From our distance, they looked like dark figures more than anything, which somehow made it even worse. 2 of them started walking toward us. The third melted back into the deeper woods out of view. I told the dispatcher what I was seeing. She went quiet for a second and then asked if I had any weapons. I said I had the axe. "If it comes down to it," she said carefully, "use it to protect your family." By now Andrew was crying. Marianne did her best to calm him, but her voice was shaking. The 2 figures kept coming slowly. No shouting, no running. Just a calm, steady walk like they knew we had nowhere to go. As they got closer, we could see more clearly. They were dressed like the first man, thin, worn-out clothes, way too light for the weather. They didn't seem bothered by the cold at all. "We're here to help," they called out, waving their hands. Marianne whispered, "Do you think they're park rangers?" "Not a chance," I said, maybe a bit louder than I meant to. Right then, both of them suddenly turned and started running back toward the trees. We didn't know why until we heard it, sirens. They grew louder fast, and soon we saw the flashing lights of an approaching police SUV. It pulled into the lot quickly, spotlight scanning. As it passed, I flashed our headlights and pointed toward the direction the figures had just run. By then they were gone into the woods, but their tracks in the snow were obvious. 2 officers jumped out and told us to stay in the truck while they checked the area. More units arrived within minutes. 1 officer stayed with us. Andrew had stopped crying and was now wide-eyed, more fascinated by the police than scared. Marianne held him tightly anyway. The search took a while. When the officers came back, they told us they hadn't found anyone, just footprints going deep into the woods, then branching off in different directions. They said it was possible there were drifters or squatters camping somewhere farther in the mountains, and that sometimes people stayed hidden in remote areas during the winter. The tow truck eventually arrived and started working on our vehicle. The police stayed the whole time and made us sit in the back of a patrol car to stay warm while everything was handled. Nobody talked much. Marianne held Andrew and I stared out at the tree line, half expecting to see someone watching us from the dark. When the truck was finally loaded, they followed us back down the mountain. The ride home was quiet. None of us wanted to say anything and bring the fear back into the car. We never went back there. No more cutting Christmas trees ourselves. We didn't even drive near that area again. Even 10 years later, I refused to go anywhere near that mountain. What haunts me most is realizing how prepared they were, how long they'd been watching. They saw us arrive, waited till we were deep enough in the trees, and then disabled our only way out. They knew exactly when to appear and how to box us in. We were lucky we trusted our instincts and decided to turn back quickly. We were lucky I was still holding an axe. I don't like thinking about how easily that night could have ended very differently. Music, I still think about this one night from when I was 9 years old. It was a few days before Christmas. My parents both had things to do that evening, and since I was almost 9, they decided it was okay to leave me home alone for a short time. My mom went to the grocery store to get food for Christmas dinner, and my dad was working late like he usually did in December. I was on the couch in the living room, watching a Christmas movie and eating cookies by the fireplace next to the tree. Outside, it was already dark even though it wasn't that late. I remember the glow of Christmas lights flickering on the houses across the street. Everything felt normal until the doorbell rang. It stood out because nobody ever rang the bell that late, and my mom had drilled it into me. Never answer the door when you're alone. My parents never used the doorbell anyway. They had keys. I got up and went to the door, not to open it but to look through the peephole. A man in a Santa Claus suit stood on our porch. He had the full outfit, red coat, hat, white beard, everything. But something was wrong. He wasn't holding a sack or gifts or even a bell. Just what looked like a clipboard in one hand. And he was standing very close to the door, like he was waiting to hear the latch. I didn't know what to do, so I whispered, "Who is it?" He leaned in closer toward the door, like he was trying to see through the peephole or hear my voice better. The way he adjusted, I could tell he realized immediately that I was a kid. He put on this fake Santa voice and said he was Santa Claus and had presents for me and that I should open the door. I was 9. I didn't believe in Santa anymore, and my parents had warned me plenty about strangers. I told him to go away, that I didn't need anything. I tried to sound brave, but my voice cracked. He went quiet for a second. Then he asked, "Are you home alone?" The second he said that, a wave of panic hit me. I knew I should not answer. I backed away from the door without saying anything and went quickly back to the living room. I suddenly felt exposed standing anywhere near the entry. I sat behind the couch on the floor and stared at the TV, trying to act like everything was normal, as if pretending would make the fear disappear. Then I heard the doorknob jiggle. He was testing if the front door was locked. I wanted to scream for help, but there was no one to hear me. I stayed frozen. A moment later, another sound came from the back of the house. The back door handle was twisting. The timing was so close that I knew he must have run around the side of the house right after trying the front. That back door was older and weaker, and we almost never used it. We only had those two doors. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the landline phone, dialing my mom's number with shaking fingers. When she answered, I spoke so fast I could barely get the words out, trying not to cry. I told her someone dressed as Santa was trying to get into the house. Her tone changed instantly. She told me she was coming home right away and that under no circumstances was I to open any doors. She told me to stay in the living room, keep the curtains closed, and stay low. I did what she said. I sat on the floor behind the couch, completely still, listening. Every small noise from outside made me jump. I thought I heard footsteps, maybe light tapping on the siding, but I couldn't be sure. Eventually it got quiet. Not long after, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I recognized the sound of my mom's squeaky brakes and felt a rush of relief. I stayed where I was until I heard the front door unlock and slam shut. My mom came in breathing hard, holding grocery bags, and locked the door behind her. She called out for me, and I ran straight into her arms. After she hugged me, she told me she'd just seen a man in a Santa suit walking down our street. She said she slowed her car and rolled down the window, yelling at him, asking what he was doing going door to door. He told her he was asking for donations for his cousin's missing dog. She didn't believe him. She said he looked nervous and walked away fast when she started yelling. She told me she was proud of me for not opening the door and for calling her right away. Then she called the police and reported him. We never heard what came of it, whether he was caught or he just vanished into another part of the neighborhood. A couple of neighbors later said a man dressed as Santa had knocked on their doors too, asking for donations, but they thought it seemed like a scam. That didn't change the fact that he tried both our doors after hearing a child's voice inside. He knew I was alone and still went around the house looking for another way in. I think about that night every year around Christmas when I see Santa decorations. I remember being 9 years old, staring through the peephole at that costume, knowing deep down that whoever was under it was not there to deliver joy or gifts. I was lucky the doors were locked, and I was even luckier my mom got home when she did.